We've been tracking Biden versus Trump polling lately. The story of the past few months has obviously been an implosion of support for Joe Biden amongst young voters and Arab voters, which is really leading to leads for Trump across the board, both in the nationwide popular vote and in several critical swing states. And so Morning Joe looked into this polling. So we're going to see the new poll numbers and the reaction from the pollster. This was a Bloomberg Morning Consult poll. So let's go to Joe and Mika for this.
Beating President Joe Biden in 7 swing states, including 6 won by the sitting president in 2020. According to the new numbers from Morning Consult and Bloomberg, Trump holds a 4-point lead over Biden in Arizona, a 6-point lead in Georgia, 4 points in Michigan, 3 points in Nevada, 2 points in Pennsylvania, 4 points in Wisconsin. Those in addition to a 9-point lead for Trump in North Carolina, a state he won by less than a point in 2020. The new survey also shows Trump with a 7-point victory across all those battleground states when third-party candidates are included on the ballot. Joining us now, White House reporter for Bloomberg, Akayla Gardner, with more on these poll numbers. Akayla, what stood out to you?
I think what stood out to me the most was definitely when those declared third-party candidates and independent candidates were added in, Trump's lead extends to 7 points. So we specifically asked voters about Jill Stein, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Cornel West. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. by far had the most support at 9%. And I think this really underscores some of Democrats' worst fears. They had fear that some of these candidates were going to pull away voters from Joe Biden, of course, and this poll at least suggests that they will. But we have seen Democratic efforts to push back against some of these candidates. We've seen some PACs like Move On.
I'm sorry, push back against some of which candidates? The candidates who are polling single digits or the candidate who's beating Joe Biden? Because usually, I mean, I don't know. I don't get paid the big bucks to do this. But usually you go after the person who has more support than you, not the person who has less support than you, right? When somebody stands in the middle of the stage at the primary debate, right, that's the person who gets all the incoming, right? You don't attack the person who's polling at 2 or 3 or even 9 points if you're Joe Biden. You would try and make the case that you're better for the country than Donald Trump. But of course, he can't do that. They've run out of arguments, as we've been tracking over the past several weeks, not just in terms of foreign policy, but they have no economic argument. James Carville, we did a big segment on that. He is resigned to just saying, look, I can't convince people of the truth if they don't want to see it. That's it.
God damn it. God damn it. Americans don't realize how goddamn good they have. God damn it, the thing they do.
That's it. That's all they have.
Well, Keaton, if I might suggest, hey, maybe that's why you're schlepping on YouTube and these people are getting paid millions of dollars to talk shit on Morning Joe because, maybe they know something you don't.
Well, let's see.
Maybe they have their finger on the real pulse of political reality.
Let's see. Let's let her finish.
On the Iron Pack, basically arguing that these candidates do not have a path to the presidency. Move On also debated no labels, which could also put out a candidate in early 2024. And that just adds to the worries that if more candidates, third-party candidates specifically, add to this race, that it could eventually hurt Joe Biden.
It's just amazing how no one bothers to make a case for Joe Biden against Donald Trump. And when you look at the way the establishment feels about Israel-Palestine, you even have never-Trump liberals like Mike Rappaport saying, I might have to vote for Pig Dick Donald Trump over Joe Biden. Like, they are just not bothering to make a case that Biden is better for the country than Trump because they have no case to make. They're not acting as if there's any room to grow.
Right.
Because there is no room to grow, and they're not even making a case. They have no case to make on any front whatsoever. I've never seen a campaign so completely paralyzed as this one.
Well, it's also because we've arrived at a moment that societies throughout history, sometimes democracies, sometimes not, have arrived at where the collapse in legitimacy of the government is so severe that the people cannot be won over anymore. This is when the powerful just become an object of satire, derision, laughter, It's when you get to that point that the people have nothing left for you but mockery, it's over. They arrived there before the French Revolution. They arrived there before the collapse of the Eastern Bloc and the Soviet Union. And we've arrived here now. It's not just something that happens in democracies. It's something that seems to always precede the end of the total collapse of authority. So picking Donald Trump, I've said nobody really had a positive case for Joe Biden. People don't really, I mean, he's got his fans, but people don't really have a positive case for Donald Trump either. Donald Trump, that's like, let's elect a pig. Let's elect a pig. That'll show him what we think of him. Let's elect a pig. That's what Donald Trump is for people. And last time, that feeling was limited to Republicans, to disaffected working class. Now, when you see assholes like Mike Rappaport singing that song, it's spreading to the PMCs. There are a certain number of the PMCs are starting to feel this way too. And at that point, you've really lost the game because that's your backbone. The PMCs are all they had left.
Yeah, at that point, you're just getting flooded from every direction. Like, I think the MAGA base, it's not just a cult of personality. I mean, there's obviously some of that. There's some of that with every candidate, right?
Sure.
But I think a lot of the hardcore MAGA base see Trump as a counterweight to not just Joe Biden, but to Anthony Blinken, to Jake Sullivan, right? To Matthew Miller. Like, anybody who's tuned in really knows that's who's running the country right now. And they know that they want World Wars 3 and 4 at the same time, which I guess would be folded into one if they happen simultaneously. And they see Trump as really the only thing that can get in the way of that. So, like, to the extent that they actually trust him to engineer some new political future, some new vision for America and the world, some of them feel that way. But I think a lot of them see him as, ironically, the same way the powers that be saw him while he was president, as this big fucking thing in their way that they can't push out of their way. And to a lot of people, that's not only good enough, that's actually necessary.
Some do see him that way, but if you realistically look at the way he governed, yes, he did throw a few wrenches in the war machine. He was also very accommodating to those hedge fund managers and Wall Street thieves that he said he was going to take to task.
So
in the end, he really did not act against the interests of, traditional neoconservative Republicans. He was more reticent on war. That much is true. But he certainly was not... If he had manners on Twitter, the press would have been fine with him. They gave him that moment. I've said this before. When he bombed Syria, there was that moment. Oh, he became president tonight. The press was making an overture to him. Okay, let's start over, and we'll give you the George Bush hand job if you just shut up and stop calling us the enemy of the people. And he wouldn't play. He wouldn't play, and that was it. But in terms of his policies, he really, except in that one area, which I grant you is an important area, was not much different from any of his Republican predecessors. Tax cuts for the rich, nothing for the poor. So, yes, he has his fans, unlike Joe Biden, who I have yet to meet a literal Joe Biden fan who was under 70 years old. I've never met someone under 70 who actually had a positive feeling about Joe Biden. But I think when you're talking about the underlying psychological Jungian unconscious impulse that is giving him these poll numbers, I think it's let's elect a pig and run it in a limousine through Washington to show the system what we think of it. I think there's more of that on a visceral level than, well, Trump is better on war. I don't think there's as much of that kind of a thought out case as there is that impulse to just absolutely spit in the face of the establishment.
Please clap.